Hey everybody, Pat here again from West Corners Custom Cycles. Welcome back to the Underground Garage. You see my breath here. It's about 33 degrees out here in New York. We got 2-3 inches of snow out there. Dropped on us last night. I got the heaters going, so it should warm up here pretty soon. But today we got two more things to do on this 91 bagger that I've been working on. I had it covered up to keep some of the dust and everything off of it, but the two things we got left are we got to wire all the lights on the front and the back, and we got to get this carburetor cleaned out. I also got to get that bar back from Chrome, but that's another story I'll tell you later. So we got to get all this off. It's all Allen's. There's two here, there's two here, three around the front. Should be able to pull this off the front of it, the hypercharger. There's a vacuum line on the back. Once we get that up, there's two bolts here on either side, holding the mount that the carburetor's on to the motor, so it's all nice and solid. Well, let me get you in here closer so you can watch and see what we're doing better. Okay. Now, the two on the sides here, two there and two here, are different than the three on the front. Three on the front are 5/32, and these two on either side are 7/64. Now, I like to use a wrench. I put it on the Allen, gives me a little more leverage. I can pop it free. So let's get these off of here. Actually, I'll go with these top ones first. They're not in there too tight. I guess I don't need the wrench. Now, something you should definitely do is either take the hardware and put it in a bag so you do not lose any of it. I shouldn't have an issue with this because I'm literally taking it into the house. We're going to put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and as soon as it's done, I'm bringing it right back out here and putting it right back on the bike. So hopefully it shouldn't be off here more than an hour or two. But I'm putting the hardware right back in the holes on this, so I don't lose anything. Now you can see on the side plate, this hypercharger flap goes into this little rubber grommet here when you put it back together. Put that right on the footboard. Okay, other side here. Let's see what I'm doing. So either put this hardware in a bag or screw it back in the holes it came out of. That way you don't lose any of it. Put this hardware right back in the holes you get it out of. And you may not have a hypercharger, doesn't matter. Do it on whatever air cleaner you have or anything else for that matter. Either bag and tag your stuff in a Ziploc bag, or put it right back in the hole it came out of, and that way you don't got to figure out where it went. All right. Now I'm going to pull these front three because this flap on the hypercharger is hooked to a linkage in here that's vacuum operated. And I want to disconnect as little as possible on this thing. Just enough to get the carburetor off and get it back as easy and quickly as I can. If you hear that noise in the background, my camera happens to be right next to the heater. Making some noise. I got a propane heater. But it takes the edge off. Now that's the air cleaner, comes right off with the front of it. These 3 bolts. Like I said, I'm putting these right back where they came from. All 3 bolts are the same. Okay. Now we have 3 Allens right here that hold this back plate onto the carburetor. Those are 3/16. Like I said, I like to use a wrench to help give me a little leverage to break them free. Well, there goes that. Now, I believe if I remember right, my buddy, Shepherd, yes it is. I thought it was an S&S carburetor on here. And it is okay. Now, that's the vacuum unit. The vacuum hose going to it to operate the flap. That's the linkage. We're just going to set that off to the side. And we're going to put all the bolts back in. Actually, I can't do that yet. I got to take these 2 big ones off first, so this plate isn't going to come off. All right, let me get a wrench. Here, okay. That is 3/4. And as I've said 100 times before, nothing on a carburetor needs gorilla strength to tighten it down. Give it German specs, good and tight. over crank it down. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably not, yep. My buddy, the shepherd who used to own this, I think milled and made this whole bracket right here. I'll bet my bottom dollar. I'll have to ask him when I talk to him later. And there we are. Now we're at the carburetor. And that dismounts from two Allens, one up here on the top on the intake manifold and one down here on the bottom. This is a S&S Super E carburetor. Alright, well I'm going to get an Allen. I'm going to go around the other side of this bike. I'm going to loosen these Allens. Excuse me. I'll have to undo, I'll show you once I get it disconnected from the manifold how to undo the throttle cable, and we will undo the fuel line right here. Then we're going to have to drain the float bolt because I'm sure there's some old gas in there. But let me get on that back side, and once I get them two bolts out, I'll come back and we can go through the rest of it. You don't need to watch me take two Allen bolts out. You know how to do that. All right, everybody. Lots happened since 2 seconds ago. As you can see, tank is off, seat is off, rear tire is off. How this all happened, I gotta explain to you. I went to get the back two bolts out of the Allen bolts here, out of the carburetor. Well, my buddy had relocated the coil on this thing that used to be up here, and he put it over here. It's a crane coil. And high performance coil he put over there, but he put it where the horn used to be, so it blocked my access to this top bolt. So I figured if I got the tank off, I could get to it from here. So I went to take the tank off, and I couldn't get the tank off without taking the seat off. And the seat, I put a bolt through the back of it, and it had a lock nut on it, and I couldn't get up to that with the tire on it. So I had to take the tire off, which is all okay because I had to get the tire off to do the wiring on the rear fender and the rear lights. And the tank has to come off there, you know, for everything to go for paint anyway. And so no big deal. I had to take the seat, tank, and rear tire off anyway. So that's all done. We're back. I finally got this broke free with an Allen wrench, the top one. And then I had to get in there with these angled pliers and work it out the rest of the way. So I'm going to put a hex bolt with a hex head on there so I can just get it with a wrench right here next time if I ever have to take it off again. But I can get this one out. I'm going to go around the other side, pop that back one out. We'll take this off. I told you I was going to unhook the gas line here. Didn't have to. It's already unhooked from the tank, so I'm just going to pull it out. The only thing we're really going to have to disconnect after I take these two bolts out is this throttle cable, and that's real simple. So I'll be right back. I'm going on the other side. Not going to take you with me because there's not a lot of room over here. These are a 5/16 or 8 millimeter, however you want to go. And you got that top bolt just about out, and so you can see that carburetor wiggling around like that. There. That was only in by about a half a thread. Okay, there we go. That's the fuel line. It was already unhooked. My buddy put a nice fitting on there on the end. I like that. Excuse me. Now I'm gonna bring you in closer here so you can see how to unhook this throttle cable. All right, I got this thing on 10 times zoom so you can see this, but right here, this is the throttle cable coming down. This is just the throttle cable bracket. Got these two parts here because at one time this was originally push and pull, two throttle cables. One went in this side, one went in this. Now it's one. But the way you disconnect this, you pull up on this, the cable will come right out this slot here. Once it does that, you just turn the carburetor, the cable pops right out. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. So now we got this off. I'm going to take it downstairs and I'm going to show you how to take it apart, go through it. We're going to put it in the ultrasonic cleaner and we'll get her cleaned up and go from there. Okay. All right, everybody, got this thing down here on the bench. Gonna get it all pulled apart. I just took like 15-20 minutes, went around it with this wire brush, cleaned off all the dirt I could on the outside of it. It was pretty dirty actually, but that way it's less dirt you got to worry about getting in. I know we're gonna put it in the ultrasonic cleaner right here. Let me show you. Boom. You can see I already got it full or half full of water. I'm going to add our detergent to it. This is what I use. Don't use anything really strong. A lot of the purple stuff out there is not good for aluminum. It will actually eat it and corrode it, so I don't use that. I bought a gallon of it for this at first, but then when I read it, I couldn't use it. So I use this. Works fine. It's very mild. It's never given me a problem. So that's it. I mix it half and half, water and the green cleaner in there. I mixed hot water in here already, so I'm going to turn that on, get the heater going, and let that go while we're taking this apart. All right, there really isn't a lot to these. We're going to get this apart. We're going to put it in there, clean it all up, get it out here and get it back together, and I'm going to show you how to adjust it to base settings so that when you get it on the bike, it'll be all set and ready to start. You'll have to fine tune it from there. But, and when I go to do that on the bike, I'll let you know and we'll do a video of that too. But right now I'm just going to get it back together and on the bike. Okay, there's an O-ring right here. Most of the time you do not want to put an O-ring or a gasket into the ultrasonic cleaner. I'm going to try and get this out of here. If it doesn't want to come out easily, then I will run it because I don't want to destroy it. I do not have a rebuild kit. I'm just cleaning this and putting it back together. I know it ran fine. I rode it for 2-3 years before I put it out there on the lift. And it shouldn't have any issues, but just needing a cleaning. Okay. We're going to take this off first. This holds your cables. If you're thinking about changing to an S&S setup on your bike, your stock cables probably won't work. You should get an S&S cable. Just a heads up. Now, this is your fuel screw. It actually is just for fuel. A lot of people think it's a fuel and air mixture screw. It is not. It's just for fuel. You can check that where yours is set if you've got one. These are supposed to be set at 1 1/4 out, but I know that already, so I'm just going to take this out for cleaning purposes. Now, these have a taper on them. Now, well, you can see it. Get it against the white background. When you screw these things in, any of the adjustment things on here, you just screw them down gently until they snug. You don't ever crank them down on a carburetor. You'll break things. You'll hurt it, and you'll ruin your carburetor. Okay, that's out. Now we're going to turn it over. We're going to take this float bowl off. Now this float bowl has one, two, three. The fourth screw for this float bowl is this long one right here. These other two hold the cover to the accelerator pump. So let me, with a screwdriver, Pop these 4 off, take this float ball off, see what we're looking like in here. I did pull the drain plug right here. It's a 5/8 bolt for to drain the old gas out of it once I got it off the bike, and nothing came out. Now, I don't remember, because it's literally been 7 or 8 years this bike has been sitting on that lift waiting to get done. So I don't remember if I drained it or not. And we'll see what it looks like in here when I get this float ball off. 1 long screw, 3 short ones. 3 short ones, I think, are all the same length. Yes. Okay, now be careful of your gasket if you don't have a rebuild kit and you're just going to put this, clean it and put it back together. Actually, it's not looking too horrible. And there's some crud down in there, so I'm glad I pulled it apart. We will clean it since we got it apart. But it's not horrible. There's some crud in there. Now, let's see if we can get this gasket off here without destroying it. Loose everywhere, but on these 2 little, see if I can gently coerce it into coming off. There we go. Dun dun dun. Okay. We'll set that off to the side. We don't want that to get hurt. As you can see, it's pretty clean in there. Some of the stuff is dirty. Now you're going to want to poke out everything that's got a hole on it. Your primary jet, your secondary jet, this little tube here. There's also one coming up from the accelerator pump right here on the in the float bowl. It's got a rubber O-ring on it right here. See if I can get that off. Try and show you. Got a blue little rubber O-ring right here. We'll take that off and we'll just set it right here. All right. Now, to take this float out of here, there's a screw right here. There's a rod that goes across here that this pivots up and down on. Turn it this way. And right here is where your fuel comes in and shuts off when that float goes up and down. Now, this screw holds that access point on there. We take it off like this. And the whole thing will lift right on up out of there. Nice and easy peasy. And you can see. And it just hangs on there. When this pivots, that goes up and down, turns the gas on, shuts it off coming into the float ball. Yeah, there's quite a bit of crud down in there. I'm glad I pulled it apart. All right. Good enough. That's all there is to taking this apart. On the bottom, you have your accelerator pump. Now this, you take these 2 screws out. Now when you do this, be extremely careful because there's 2 little passages down in here. One of them's got a spring with a bearing in it, and the other one's got a bearing in it, and you don't want to lose any one of them. Plus, they got a little rubber O-ring on them and a gasket, and you don't want to lose any of that stuff, so you want to be careful when you pull this up off of here that nothing goes flying. Get your screw broke loose. There we go. the spring in there isn't going to make this top pop off of there or anything. It's not that intense. It's just a tiny little spring. Just a check valve. But it's to keep pressure on the ball bearing that's in there. Oh, wow. Oh, my. Look at all the crud in there. And like I said, there goes that spring and ball bearing. Wow, there's a lot of crud in there. Unbelievable. You have to do a bunch of cleaning in there before we put it into that. Now, you can see there's a blue rubber O-ring right here. And there's one still down in here, and there's a little bearing under it. The spring and ball bearing go in the hole closest to the center. Just to let you know. And the spring goes in first, and then the bearing on top. Because what happens is that bearing comes up when that spring pushes it up, and it seats against this hole here and shuts off that passage. Now we're going to take both the O-rings out of here. Again, without destroying them. They're the same size, so it doesn't matter where they go. Actually, one looks a tiny bit bigger than the other one, but maybe that's just an optical illusion. Now, okay. And get the camera here. Show you guys a little closer up what's going on and how dirty this is. Look at the crud in there. That's what came out of there. So yeah, I'm glad I pulled this apart because that is filthy. Filthy, filthy. When it goes back together, it will be like brand new. All right. That's the spring and the two ball bearings. Like I said, the spring and ball bearing go in this one, ball bearing on top. And then the other bearing goes in this one here. And they both get the blue O-ring on them. So make sure that's all together. Now this is a diaphragm right here on this that comes off. I'm going to have to see if I can work that off of there and look under there and clean everything up too. Okay. Let me get that diaphragm off of there and see what that's looking like under there. Again, be very gentle. This diaphragm, I know, actually sits down in a groove. I know from watching the video on it. Okay. Now there's a little spring under here too. I'm going to try and show you why I take this off so you get it. Okay, that's the diaphragm. And it goes down with concave side down. And that's the spring that comes out of it. So don't lose that either. And as you can probably see, it's not real clean in there either. But we're going to get all this cleaned out, poked out, cleaned off with a wire brush in there and ready to go. I will get back to you when all this stuff is back out. Just so you know, I take a strainer like this. I put all the little pieces in there. I set it down in there and I do it. Then I'll probably just do the two parts of the body by themselves. You just put them in there. This has a timer on it. You set it for 5 minutes. That's the max time on it. If it's not clean enough after that, I run it a second time. But usually I've never had it take more than 2 times to get everything good and ready to go. We'll get her all back together, and I'll get her back on the bike. She'll be ready to go as soon as we get gas in it. All right, I'll be back in a bit. All right, everything's out, done, dried off, ready to go. Let's get this thing back together. I'm going to move this part of the body out of the way for right now. We'll start with the float bowl. Take the float bowl plug. There's an O-ring that goes around it. Just make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. There's an O-ring that goes around it. Put it right around the base of it. Screws right into the bottom. The O-ring keeps it from leaking. Take your 5/8 wrench. Snug her down. Again, nothing on a carburetor needs to be cranked down really hard. Okay. So, we're going to take this little, oh geez, I almost dropped it. This little tiny spring. And that's going to go in the one right here, right next to the brass plug that you just put in. You're going to drop this little tiny spring in there. And this is tiny. That's how big it is. You guys all see it? Where is it? Right here in my hand. It is just a little tiny spring. That's the one that the ball bearing is going to go on top of. Okay. Now, take one of your ball bearings, put it right on top of that spring, and then you take one of your blue rubber O-rings, and that goes right down around it. Then you have your other ball bearing. These things are, I say ball bearings, they're only the size of a BB. And you drop that in the hole right next to it. And then you take your other blue rubber O-ring, set that right on top of that one. All right. I wonder. I'm just looking, and it looks like one of these. No, I guess they're the same. Pop them in their little hole. Now, without losing either one of your BBs, just set that real gently right there. You're going to take the cap that goes on this. All nice and clean now. That BB sits right up against there and seals that hole. Now, you're going to put your spring in here. That's the spring. You're going to set it in there. You're going to take the bottom of the concave part of the diaphragm is going to go right on top of that. And we're going to turn it over. And set it on there. That's what it's going to look like when it's in there. I don't know how well you can see this. I'm holding it down with my finger because there's a spring under it. Now we got to. Okay, that didn't work. let's try this one more time. I don't know how I'm going to do that. There we go. I think I got it that time, people. Had to get it up in the light. That's a little tricky, so be careful. You don't want to pinch that diaphragm in there and not have it sealing like it's supposed to. Careful, make sure you don't cross thread anything. Again, be gentle with all this. You do not want to crank down on any of these screws except just to snug them down. These are aluminum bodies on this and steel screws. You'll strip the threads right out of the aluminum body. So just snug them down. That's all you need. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like. Remember, the long screw that holds the float bowl on goes in that hole. So this is where the fuel line hooks up on the newer ones. This comes off at a 90 and it actually swivels around. It's a nice little setup. But okay. Now, I'm going to set this aside for a second. We're going to take this body and start putting pieces in that. Oh, you know what? No, I'm going to wait a second. I'm going to get the float. The float and the float assembly back in this. You take the float. Dun, dun, dun. Get in front of the camera here. This is your... that's what goes on the float, goes down in the hole. It's tapered when it goes down in the hole. Down in this brass fitting, the hole down at the bottom is tapered. And when your float goes up and down, this goes up and down, and it either chokes off the gas or gives it more gas, depending on what it needs. So you just take this, and you hang it on there just like that. You take the brass rod that it pivots on, and you just put that through there like that. Now, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. This brass housing right here is what that's going to go down into, and you got to get that brass rod setting these two grooves across here, and there's a screw that's going to go in here to hold it down. So, like so. See if I can give you a good shot of that so you can see what it looks like. And you have to get you over here a little more in the light. Adjust the camera some. Okay. Now, if you can see this, that's the brass rod. This is down in the brass housing. And when it pits, see how that goes up and down? That's what turns your gas on, or lets gas into the float bowl. Okay, and then this screw goes right here. that's what holds it all in there. Now, I'm not going to monkey around with measuring float height or anything because I rode this bike for a few years before it went on the lift, so I know it ran fine. But just to show you, see, that's how you want to make sure that pivot's okay and doesn't get caught up on anything. Now, on this brass part here, don't forget, there's one last little O-ring, and it's tiny. See how big it is compared to my fingernail? That goes right on here. All right. To where it goes. I'll set that aside for now. And then we're going to get back into this body. I took the main jet out. This is a 1/2 inch. This just screws right back down into here. And your wrench. Snug it up. Like I said, just snug. Don't crank on anything. Now, this is your secondary jet. And again, well, I guess that was off camera a little when I screwed that in there. This is your secondary jet. Screw that down in there. Just give it a little snug. Now, right here on this brass fitting where my fingernail is where this rubber piece goes. So we're just going to pop that in there. Okay, make sure it's popped down on there. And then this rod, the steel rod, goes up through there. And when this pivots, that rod pushes. Okay, now you take that rod out for a second because I'm going to tip this back over and it's probably going to fall out. Okay, where am I here? Okay, this is our fuel adjustment screw, and there's a spring that goes onto that. They go like that. And screws right into the top of the housing right here. Now just screw it in part way where it's got some tension on the spring, that way it won't come out, fall out. And we're going to have to adjust that later, and I'll show you how. Now, this hole right here, I took this off camera. This is your enrichener. Some people like to think it's choke, but it's not. And this just slides in here. Just like that. That's also 1/2 inch. Turn it into it's just snug down. That's all. Okay. And then you have your housing that holds your throttle cable. And it's pretty easy to tell where that goes, because if you see this part here where the screw goes and this little stud, fits right into there, and that's where the little stud goes. Fits in there just like that. Put your screw in. Snug it down. Now, you just got to marry the two halves. Don't forget to put this rod back in where the rubber goes. Where is it? Right here. And don't forget your gasket. Usually I would recommend a new gasket. This one isn't too horrible. Actually, it looks in pretty fair shape. So, now we just hook the two sides together. Get over here where you guys can see better. Got to get all the things in the right holes. And it should slide right together like that. Then we take the long one. Short one there. Short one there. And one over there. Again, be careful. Make sure you don't cross thread anything. You got steel screws and aluminum housings. None of this is fine thread, so they usually go all right. Get over here. Okay, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. That's it. Done and complete. Back together. Nice and clean. I love how that ultrasonic cleaner cleans things up. But I told you I would show you how to set this too. Now, this is just going to be base settings according to S&S. This is the basic setting when you put it on the bike to get you to where it'll start, run, and idle. And then, you know, obviously you got to adjust idle and fuel and, you know, so your plugs burn right. But I'm going to show you the basic setup. This right here is your fuel screw. You turn this all the way in with your fingers only. Don't use the screwdriver and just barely snug it up. Let me see. Okay, that's snug. Now, you go out 1 1/4 turns. So this is half, 1 1/4. And that's where that one's adjusted. Now that's your base setting for your fuel going into the carb. Now, this screw right here goes for your where your throttle cable is. You want to back this off all the way so it's not touching. Let's see if I can get you in here so you can see better. This screw goes through and it has a stop. It touches on down in here, right here. You want to back it off so it's not touching that stop. Then you want to turn it. The stop I'm talking about is this tab right here. the screw goes through and it touches right on the edge of that tab. Now you want to bring the screw down right till it touches on that tab, and as soon as it touches, turn it one more half turn. Now, let me see. You want to go oh, just touching right now. Now look down at the screw and go 1/2 complete turn. Now what that's going to do, it's going to crack this throttle plate just enough to let it start and run and idle. Okay. Now, this one, this screw right here is for your accelerator pump. You want to screw that all the way in until it stops, very gently again. Now, once it's stopped, you want to back it off 2 complete turns. See if I can get you in here so you can see this. There you go. That's closed all the way. You go half. Whoop. Get in there. 1. Another half. 2. And that's where that's set. That's your base settings. Okay, those are the only 3 settings on this carb. And that's your base settings. You put this back on the bike and you start it. It will start and it will run and it will idle. Then you're going to want to take this out. You're going to want to warm your bike up, ride it around for 5-10 minutes because you do not want to adjust a cold bike. Because then if you adjust it when it's cold, when you start it, it's going to run rich. And so get it warmed up, then you can make any of the adjustments you want. You want to make your adjustments with your RPM set at 1,000 RPMs. I'm not going to make you guys watch the... Get this thing set up so you can see me. All right. I'm not going to make you guys watch me put this back on the bike. You watch me get it off. You can figure out how it goes back on. I got a hypercharger, so most people, it isn't going to be the same to watch me do this anyway because it got a regular air cleaner. Just putting this vent hose on here. Anyway, that's how that goes. I'm getting it back on the bike. That'll be all set and ready. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to jump on, get the electric done on that. I should hopefully have that all tied up tomorrow. I've got all the electrical and connections I need, wiring, and so we can get that all done. And then it'll be ready. It'll be ready to start, go out for paint. I might start it running off an IV bottle just to let you guys see. I don't want to put gas in the new tank and then have to drive or drain it back out to send it off for paint. But, so there you go. Super E carburetor from S&S. Disassembly, clean, reassembly, and set the basic adjustments. Okay, again, Pat from West Corners Custom Cycles, as always, keep the shiny side up, be good to each other, and live life behind bars. All right, peace out.